Hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Sedacca, and you're listening to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with Rosalind Sedacca on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And today, as always, we have guests who have changed their lives and made a powerful difference in the lives of other people through the lessons that they've learned going through divorce and recovering and moving on in their life. And I'm very honored to introduce you today to Drew Deraney. And the topic of our conversation today is Rising Strong, Unveiling the Power Within After Divorce. So let me tell you a bit about Drew. In a 9-month span, a few years ago, Drew Deraney, the proud father of 3, endured 4 faith-shaking life events that found him determined to find a better way to live. Through intense self-reflection and awareness, he realized that in order to be happy, he must adhere to his standards of honesty, integrity, and truth. And he found his purpose and mission in life to empower men who are ready to make a change to do the same. So welcome, Drew. It's a pleasure to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start by diving into this conversation. Obviously, you are especially talking to men, but obviously women can listen in and
Absolutely.
glean a lot of wisdom from what you've learned, because we all have men in our lives, even if it's post-divorce relationships. We want to make sure that our co-parenting relationships are as clean and healthy and positive as possible, especially for the sake of our children, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What specific steps did you take to begin your journey of self-discovery post-divorce, and how did you find your natural power along the way?
Wow, that's a good that's a good question. It's been an iterative process. I mean, the way I found out I was getting divorced, my best friend told me that my wife was leaving me. She had contacted him and his wife because we're godparents of their youngest daughter, and there's differing stories as to why that happened. The point, though, that was important is we decided right away that we were not going to go through the court system. We decided to go through mediation because we wanted to spare our children from going through that because it is traumatic. And the one thing we did very well was co-parent, and the mediation process was a lot more allowed us to really make decisions on our own rather than allow a court system to make it for us. And the mediator was great because she realized that every time that she mentioned the children, my wife and I at the time, our shoulders would drop and we would be a lot more relaxed. If the mediator brought any other topic up, we seemed to get ready to do a boxing match. So
Mhm.
the mediator learned right away that she started everything with for the sake of the children, comma, and then would go in. And so that set us at ease in a sense that we knew we were there really for the children and we were looking towards the future and what was best for us right now. I'd say what was really interesting, what got me through it afterwards, is I realized at that time that men and women, I believe, go through different thinking and different processing when it comes to divorce. Because I tell people I was blindsided, I didn't see it coming. And I believe she was at the stage where she knew that's what was going to happen. It was after the fact that I realized that I was missing a lot of the signs because I wasn't as observant and self-aware as I could have been. And when the divorce was final in April of 2018, I had already started to work on myself to wonder who is the real Drew. And I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of research too, and realizing that our belief systems are 50 greater than 50% of our belief system is formed by the age of 7. And by the age of 18, it's about 90% of our belief systems formed. And I started to think to myself that could it be that I've been living somebody else's belief system all these years and not really living what was at my core? And that's what started to make me think because what I had started to realize is whenever I made a decision that seemed to be misaligned from my core, my standards, I would get this pit in my stomach. And it's that intuition that, and I didn't listen to it. I
Yeah.
always doubted my intuition and I always sided with the belief system that was taught to me. And that caused me not to be my authentic self and caused me to be a people pleaser.
Yeah. And you're
Uh,
not alone in that.
yeah, I've been talking to a lot of men and women that if we are not comfortable in our own skin, then we put a mask on to hopefully have people like us, but it's not really us. So in a way, it's manipulative. And I learned that I was kind of being subconsciously manipulative to people by putting on this mask. And I needed to find a way to be secure in my own skin and I really had to be aware of my thoughts and aware of my feelings and find out who the heck I was.
Hmm.
Because all this happened, I was in my late 30s, and at that time, a lot of men start to think of what's rest, going to happen the rest of our lives, what are we going to be known for, our legacy, and all that. So all that collided with me at the same time.
Yeah, and you're not alone with any of that. And but it's wonderful that you gain that awareness. I always talk to clients about the lessons they learned from their divorce. And
Mhm.
what you're talking about are the kinds of lessons that make a huge change because then we could progress and move ahead differently
Right.
as opposed to just doing the same old and getting into another relationship and repeating those patterns. So good for
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to find out what specific transformative moments or realizations
Mhm.
you experienced that helped you tap into your natural powers post divorce.
Man, that's another good question. When during the marriage, I ended up having a panic attack, and I thought it was a heart attack. It was, but the thing is, with the first thing they did is, they had me see a psychiatrist, and the first thing that happened, I was put on antidepressants and anti-anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
which really masked what may have been going on underneath. So I really was oblivious to what was happening inside my body for years. And it was after the divorce I realized, you know what? I don't feel myself, and maybe that has something to do with it. So, I had talked to my psychiatrist, and she was able to help me wean off of those medications. So I could really, that was the first step to want to be my true self. I had to stop numbing the pain. I wanted to address the pain, and I wanted to find out why I was a people pleaser. And I realized that a lot of my uh, regret from the past needed to be eliminated. I had to work on that regret because it made me an angry and resentful person. And it put me in a state where I knew how can you be happy if you're regretting your past? So I worked very hard on forgiving myself for, hey, Drew, you didn't have the tools to make different decisions back then. Give yourself a break, cut yourself slack. So by forgiving myself was the start, and then forgiving others for the error of their ways. They don't know what they don't know. And when you harbor resentment, the other person doesn't know you're resentful. You got to talk to them. So for the people I really wanted to keep in my life, I did reach out to them and say, I have this thing I got to talk to you about. It's been bugging me, and boom. And then that also helped eliminate the regret. So starting out with forgiveness was huge. And then I had to move towards the anxiety piece because that was fear of the future. And knowing that I can't change the future, I needed to do something to address that fear of the future. And I started reading Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's book, and how he talks about human beings have six basic fears. And the top two are fear of poverty and fear of criticism. And I had to really work on that fear of criticism. And that's how I really learned I was a people pleaser. And by realizing that my standards are honesty, integrity, and truth, my truth, what's inside of me, not what other people are saying, I've been able to have a desire to help others and live more in service and in kindness. And having that desire and the faith that I can help people allowed me to get rid of that anxiety and fear of criticism. So now I don't care what people think of me. And I care about people. I just don't care what people think if I have a differing opinion or who I am. So now I'm solid in my own skin. And then I had to work on how do I get myself to the present moment.
Yeah.
And thank God for gratitude, Rosalind,
Yes.
because
Well,
gratitude.
you're talking about all the things that I talk to clients about, so I'm totally aligned with you. forgiveness is crucial. Forgiveness of ourselves, forgiveness for others,
Right.
forgiveness for our ex, of course,
Mhm.
is very important.
Mhm.
And understanding what you said, that most of us don't know what we don't know, and that's why we make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
So with that awareness, we can be much more empathic and
Mhm.
compassionate towards others
True.
who aren't on that stage of awareness
Mhm.
and aren't as conscious as we are,
Right.
and give them the grace to understand that they have a lot of lessons to learn along the way, and we don't have to be as critical and judgmental. That judgmental part is a huge piece of it, the criticism you were talking about.
Mhm.
And I love that you're bringing up gratitude. Let's explore that more, because that's, to me, one of the crucial insights that we need in order to move ahead in our lives in the healthiest, most positive way.
Absolutely. I think gratitude is the one thing that keeps us in the present moment. What I realized is with the divorce initially, which is quite normal, I blamed my wife for the divorce, right? And you'll see a
Mhm.
pattern here. The other three faith shaking moments that happened to me was after the divorce, I got fired from my job.
Mm.
Which customarily happens to especially men because we have difficulty or a challenge compartmentalizing. So when we have one issue, we want to work on it and fix it, and we kind of forget all the other parts of our lives. So I lost productivity and focus at work.
Wow.
So that firing of my job, who did I blame? It was my boss's fault, Rosalind.
Mhm.
And then 10 days after I got fired, my son had suicidal ideations stemming from the divorce.
Wow.
He was so close to his mother, and I blame myself for that.
Wow.
It
How
hit
old
me
is
so
he?
he was 14 at the
Wow.
time. And as we got help for him at an inpatient facility, he had a premonition. He said, I hope nothing happens. And he pointed to my parents when we dropped him off, his grandparents, while I'm here. And I reassured him nothing was going to happen. And on Christmas Eve of 2018, my father unexpectedly got sick and passed away.
Wow.
That happened. He died 3 weeks later in intensive care while my son was away. So who did I blame them? I blamed God. And for me at that moment, I had a complete victim and blame mindset, which is poisonous. And I did what society says men should do. I shunned my support systems. I didn't show any emotion. I sucked it up. I manned up. I didn't ask for help. My total focus for living, because I didn't want to live, my total focus for living was to help my kids and my mother. That's it. And
Mm.
so that was my mission, regardless of how unhealthy the way I did it was. And on the other side, they were better off, and I was empty. I was as a human being, I was just a shell of myself, and I realized that I needed to find some positivity in my life in order to shake the victim and blame mindset. And the first thing was I promised myself to be the best father I could be. So I had to be there for my children. So the gratitude kicked in right away when I saw my three kids. And then, I ended up, I hired, as I started doing this whole men's movement, I hired a public speaking coach who also helped me get certified in mindset mastery as a coach. And all the stuff she was teaching, I had to practice on myself and learning about the human brain. If you do something long enough, you create a habit, and you create a habit in the conscious mind. And once it's a habit, it goes into your subconscious mind. And all of a sudden, without paying attention, you're doing some good stuff. And just by hardwiring or anchoring into my brain forgiveness, gratitude, desire, and faith, I was a completely different person. Because you
Wow.
can, well, think about it. You eliminate regret, blame, victim, and fear, and you replace those with forgiveness, gratitude, desire, and faith. That's going to do something to your brain and your mind and your soul and your whole being. And that's what I had to do. But it was the gratitude piece that is now anchoring me in the present moment.
Yeah. And those were all four empowering qualities
Oof.
that you absorbed
Yeah.
and own now.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a huge difference
They do.
when they're yours, and
Mm-hmm.
they're part of who you are. And
Absolutely.
it helps you move on,
It does.
because you're not as stuck in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not held by past patterns and habits and behaviors
Mm-hmm.
that too many people get stuck with, because they haven't made any momentum moving forward, or looking into the present. So
Right.
fabulous, fabulous inner work. It's so wonderful to hear what you're talking about, and obviously this applies to men and women, so we
Yes.
could all get value out of this
Mhm.
conversation. And I imagine there were some tools or resources or practices that were instrumental in helping you to reconnect to your higher powers this way and
Mhm.
find more empowerment after the divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned that regardless of what we believe in, there is a higher power. There has to be something bigger than us. And that could either be service to others, the universe, or God. For me, it happens to be God. And I realize that um, in order for me to be a stronger man, I had to endure something that was going to test me to see how strong I was within, because I had to really, to get through this healthy, I had to pull from within. And I realized I had greatness inside and I just needed something to help bring it out. Now, for some people, it just takes a tap on the shoulder to say, "Hey, Drew, there's a better way to live." I wasn't one of those people. I was the one that needed the 2x4 to hit me upside the head. I got four of them hit me.
Wow.
But it was only because for all that time, if you're talking about 50 years, I had just been going through the motions. I was um, living to work. I wasn't working to live. And if I wanted to be take care of my kids and my family, I had to make money. So I went off course and I was just thinking about the job and not really when I got home trying to forget that and pay attention to what was in front of me. Yeah, I had to go through that though. What's the truth in life is we become stronger by facing our adversity, and we become stronger because of how we respond to adversity, not despite the adversity.
So there's a thought that comes to my mind, a question I want to ask you,
Hmm.
because I love all of what you're saying in your messages, and they're totally aligned with the kind of messages that I provide in my own coaching. This is not as common a conversation with men in our society,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because
Right,
they're indoctrinated in different ways and it's
right.
harder for them. So what kind of feedback are you getting? What kind of response are you getting from men who are hearing you talk like this?
Mm-hmm.
How receptive are they, and what are some of the obstacles?
Well, as far as receptive, I mean, what ended up happening to me is when I had always wanted to write a book and I never really had the content, and I had the content now, and I found an editor right after COVID. When COVID happened, I, was meeting people across the globe virtually, and I started writing my book. The beautiful thing was we didn't write it pen to paper. It was done through Zoom and recorded onto like Otter, the transcription thing. So I could speak my spoken words, I could hear my own words, and then I could see my words on paper. And something happened because I was touching all five of my senses. And for me to I started telling my story to anybody who would listen, Rosalind, and I started to heal myself from within. It was the weirdest feeling that I never felt that feeling before, because I would get, I don't know, internal warmth or something was happening and it was cathartic. And so I kept telling my story. And then when I was with people in Zoom, men and women alike, I would tell my story and then they would feel comfortable around me and they would tell me their story and they would say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I told you that. I haven't said that story in years." And they're crying. Or they'll say, "I thought I was over that. I told you this." And then they didn't. So there was heal, and they started to feel better and heal from within. So I teach by stories and I teach by experience, because that elicits that visceral reaction. And when you experience something, you're more apt to start discussing what you're uncomfortable with. And so that's how I started it. And so that's been working. As far as the resistance, initially I was trying to reach those men who don't speak out, and that was extremely difficult. So I've shifted now to those men who have already started to find their greatness and they needed that extra help. um, I don't know how to get through to those men don't who think they're okay, because it's
Yeah.
just when you hear that word fine, it's how the men say they're fine. If they say, "Oh, I'm fine," that's okay. If they say, "Oh, I'm fine," I know something's wrong, and if they're willing to allow me to ask open-ended questions, then I can do that. That's been the resistance, because when
I
you're
know.
hardwired, not it's scary. We're told not to be our true selves as far as this masculinity, toxic masculinity stuff that's going on. It's in our DNA to provide and want to be strong, but then we're told we can't do that, and then we're also told not to cry. And it's like we have no what's our role then? Well, who are
Exactly.
we? What's our purpose? And it's
It's
hard to get through to a man who's been slammed like that.
yes. And hurt people,
Hmm.
men and women,
Hmm. Hmm.
and this just continues.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kudos to you for the part you're playing in all of this.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, because our
Mhm.
time's getting short,
Yep.
how can people find you and access some of your services and resources?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, my website is profitcompassion.com, and you can read there all about the Mindful Man movement. I lead a men's group called Tribal Stoics on Monday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern. It's virtual. You can find the information in the link on my site. And everything's right there. I host a free webinar on how to use a formula that I adapted called the Caveman formula to overcome self-sabotage,
Mm,
because that is the number one reason what stops men from reaching their goals. We get in our own
yes,
way.
men and women alike.
Hmm.
So you said that was Profit Compassion,
Yes.com.
and that's Profit Profit.
It is. It is. And
Okay,
compassion.
I
Yeah.
just
I created that because each of us will profit from being compassionate and will profit from receiving compassion from others.
there you
And
go.
that's the name of my company, and Mindful Man movement for obvious reasons. And yeah, you can email me at drew@profitcompassion.com if you want to.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very impressed with your message, with your story, with the candor and authenticity that you're speaking with. It's wonderful to hear that, and it's wonderful for women to know that there are men who are really struggling to move ahead with insights and awareness
Mhm.
that are going to change their consciousness, just as women are
Right.
struggling in the same way. So that's really important. And of course, men like you make much better partners moving forward in relationships because you're aware of some of the challenges that we're all overcoming.
Right.
Those pleasers and those other saboteurs that
Yep.
that are, play a part in our life keep us in the victim state and in an unhealthy mindset. We all
Absolutely.
have to overcome that. And
Right.
of course, it's a gift to the children that we love.
It is.
When they have conscious parents,
Yeah.
then they're able to live life in a much healthier way. So thank you for being my guest today. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Rosalind.
You're very welcome. So I want to remind everyone that Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with Rosalind Sedacca is available on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And we have guests every week who talk about facets of a child-centered divorce. As you know, I'm the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. And if you go to childcentereddivorce.com, you'll find my coaching services, a free ebook, articles, and resources, ebooks, e-courses, and programs that handle every facet of before, during, and long after divorce and co-parenting issues, as well as dating after divorce. All of this focused on protecting ourselves and our children to make life easier for everyone involved. So thank you for being with me. Until next time, take care and be well. Bye bye for now.